Om. Om pranam. Om pranam. Om pranam. Om. 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 Those seeing this Gifo, God in the form of those seeing this passing by. Om. In. Om. Here. 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 Om. 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 God in the happening of the 13th Satyavatara Satsangha. Om. Occurring. Om. Om. This particular teaching is a follow-up teaching to the teaching that occurred the day before yesterday in eternity. Om. God eternity. Om. And it is about God consciousness during crisis. Om. God consciousness is the same no matter what is going on, seemingly. So it could be crisis or could be anything, and it's all the same, even though it may feel like it's different. Om. So refer to the GIFO description below this transmission that is occurring. When there's coming in, pay attention to what the God content transmission is. So this Satsangha is for Om. Om Githo testing. Om Githo testing. There's sound. Sound is occurring. Great. Om. He disappeared. So again, this teaching is a follow-up teaching with this basically for the same occurrence, the same seeming crisis that is apparently going on. Om, God is great. Om. Om. And it is if that teaching has not been absorbed in God consciousness just yet, then absorb this teaching, and then find the other teaching, Sasssv 32, and continue with that, so that there'll be more context. The previous teaching was broadly speaking of crisis, not any particular crisis, although the crisis that is apparently occurring in the dreaming is used as example, as a perfect example of what would be considered crises. And again, the crisis is spreading and waxing and waning in different seeming parts of that don't really exist in truth. God manifestation on God in the form of the world, Gitvo, worldwide, Om, and varies from seeming location to location in God infinity, Om. So, and if there's they're speaking about a particular crisis having to do with disease, as there have been diseases seemingly before, and seemingly will continue in different forms. So a lot of information, God information, was given during that previous teaching. So this teaching is to be more specific about interactioning, if that is to occur, if this is God willing. This particular satsanga is occurring on God in the form of God Intel Tech Facebook platform in the Gifoswami profile. There's a lot of access to be able to participate in this live streaming. There's the ability to invite seeming God in the form of God consciousness participation in a linear seeming fashion, meaning sort of one after another participating in dreaming. That is what it would look like. And so there's ability to invite those, God in the form of those who would like to participate and voice concerns, questions, just wanting to speak, wanting to, those that might be feeling that there's feeling of aloneness during seeming crisis and all. This is the ability to be able to speak and to be able to address what the true self is, and not the seeming form, body form, and minding and all that is mistaken for the self. But this always guides to, and actually speaks to, the true self. Even though those that think that they are seeming persons or individuals or humans or whatever species would would usually think that this is speaking to a person, or what would be considered the mistaken identity. But this does not speak that way. This does not speak to that. This is speaking to God consciousness directly. God speaking to God about God. And this continues to deliver truth, God truth information, no matter under what circumstances. It could be any circumstances at all, including what is considered a world crisis, because ultimately there is nothing that is actually occurring to you as God. It is occurring to bodies, to forms, to actual body health, and can direly affect such forms. But there is not actually affecting the true self. So this is always going to continue to speak and point to the true self under all circumstances, and refer to the body if necessary for various information that needs to be exchanged. It needs to be referred to. In this particular teaching, it have to do with the health of what is called the apparent primary body. And again, and this will say this many times, just to clarify, because some have never heard of such information, that the apparent primary body is considered the small body that many think they are, but it is not. And but the true body is God Omniverse. That is the true primary body. So, but the apparent one, because the sense organs do not see the whole omniverse all at once as oneself, actually through, say, particular organs such as eyes. So, but there is what would be considered divine vision, and that is another form of vision that does not have to do with ocular organ eyes. So anyway, that the primary apparent body, the apparent primary body, is usually the one that is seen with the eyes, and that is the one that's mistaken for the body. The not true self. But the bodies need to be cared for, and the information has to be given, and the pointing to and addressing. Is the sound all right? Is there any pauses in the transmission that needs to be addressed at all, or is the sound streaming through except for the spaces in between the words? Yes. Okay, so there's if there is any seeming difficulties with the sound, then just say so. But usually there is not. But there saw that there was a little bit of buffering here. So all right. God Tech. So again, please refer to the previous teaching that went extensively into the various aspects of the GIFO crisis, GIFO world crisis, in the particular example being given is the spreading of the diseases and currently in God Eternity. And of course, this will continue to speak of God consciousness during anything that is occurring, and that there is ability to have what is called unassailability that is actually innate in oneself as the true self, that nothing can harm the true self, nothing can affect it, nothing can harm it. It, capital It, that it was never born, it never dies. Under any circumstances, all circumstances, that it is what would be referred to as pre-existent before anything else is occurring. And it is always present under all circumstances, and it is never ever affected. So during crisis, seemingly, it is the witness, and then beyond what would be called witnessing. So when Satyavatara says that that as God absolute, there has never been anything that has ever happened to God. That actually can be pointed to directly. This can actually guide into that realization through actual direct speaking. And then, as this is transmitting that this is not speaking to the person. This is not speaking to the mind content that most think they, quote, they are. It goes past the mind content and to actual God consciousness. So that God consciousness, ever since the body was small or whatever, was first seen, which first appeared, to what seems to be the current time, and there is no time, but what seems to be the current time in God eternity, there is the ever-present, never-changing presence. And there is knowing that is always there and has always been there. But that gets superimposed upon and obfuscated, and all sorts of thought content and hypnotism seem to get in the way of that. And then there is the forgetting, seemingly forgetting what oneself truly is. So during crisis, this can particularly happen, because everything becomes even more frenetic, and emotions and thoughts that are troubling, and feelings for what is occurring can affect the body, affect the mind, and can lead to different seeming states of mind. And then there is not only the regular seeming forgetting of the true self, but then it is exacerbated by seeming eventings that are occurring. So there has to be pointing back, or at least referencing the true self, if there is not the ability to suddenly break through and realize that, especially during events that are disturbing. But there can be actual guidance through all of that mind content into at least temporarily seemingly, touching that and at least feeling it in some way, to start to be able to refer to that space, that dimensionless space that God Absolute is, the true self, that everything all exists within and is immanent throughout, and is so close that there is no separation. There's no separation whatsoever between the God transcendent and God immanent. So it has already been said that during seeming crisis, that it may be especially difficult to try to realize the true self. But there are practices that can be simple practices that can be employed that will at least help. And then if there are spiritual practices that are already occurring, that there can be that can be more frequent and more intense, or if there are no spiritual practices happening, that can begin seemingly in God eternity. And then if there's, well, it depends on the seeming levels. But the true self exists always right now. So, and it can always just occur suddenly, the realization of what one truly is, especially during crisis, that is possible. So it was prescribed in the previous teaching that those on whatever seeming level of activity for sadhana, spiritual practice, that it was prescribed what spiritual practices can be done. God manifested during seeming crisis that are very simple and can be done with the body seemingly alone, although the body's never alone, but seemingly what appears to be, or it can be done in the middle of circumstances that are occurring, like if the body happened to be in a Gifo hospital, accompanying other bodies, etc. That those spiritual practices could be done anywhere, under any conditions, and that again, that meditation can be done with the eyes closed, with the body still, or with the body moving. That's first stage. Second stage is when there can be meditation with the body moving around and the eyes open. And then third stage, past the advanced stage, would be when there is not really any meditation at all anymore, and it's what would be considered samadhi, apparently, seemingly, in which case there would not be meditation, because in a sense it would be meditating all the time, and then above meditation to no meditation at all. But what you are does not have to do with meditation ultimately, and God. And if there is referring to meditation, God is meditating. A person is not meditating. So there's an activity in God. So again, this is just reiterating. Please refer to the previous teaching for more specifics. So and then japa, and then mona, silence, the verbal silence, then thought silence, ultimately true mona, God silence. Now got in the form of the info port on Satyavedism website, gifo, www.satyavedism.com, /info port, INFOPORT. It is in the description, seemingly, of this accompanying this transmission. And there is going to be a webinar shortly, very soon in God Eternity, that is to guide through the info port and also the introductory teachings. So that is the teach port. And again, the link is there. But this is referring to the first link there, the info port. So there it is highly suggested and prescribed that there be viewing the content of the info port. Okay. Now, not all of the content, because that the info port refers to all of the live stream teachings, and there are at this point, in evolution 32, and the Satsangahas, which are 13. So, and there are hours and hours and hours in eternity, countless hours, and many more to come. So for this particular teaching, it is not suggested that there be going through all of those teachings. That would be overwhelming. Although there is inviting to do so, though, that would certainly concentrate the thoughts in an entirely other direction than on what is normal information that's being disseminated now during crisis, for sure. So there's invitation to do so, but this is referring specifically to the part of the info port that highlights meditation and the mantras, the main mantras of Satyavedism so far. There are 3 main mantras, and a few other activities. There's a help. There's an introductory teaching. Actually, the info port leads to the teach port. So that's why the info port is usually the one link that is given, gifo. But there are 2 ways to get to the teach port. So this is referring to the teach port. So, but you can get to the info port that leads to the teach port, or go to the teach port directly. It's highly advised that both ports be checked regardless, just for overall information for Satyavedism. But this is referring to the teach port. So the first section are the Satsangahas. The second section is the is very beginning information. That would be SV 101 for those that need help, like immediate help, and what can be done. And there are also emergency resources for those that got in the form of those that need extra help, like immediately. Then there's a section on non-identification with limiting assertions. And that has the different categories that are usually referred to, that there's misidentification with, like being a person, being an individual, being an entity, that you are a body or have a gender or a race or a species, that you're part of a group, etc., that you're part of a country, that history exists, that time is real. All of that is not true. That's not the true self. So that is a teaching that could immediately affect, could start to activate in God consciousness immediately and affect during a crisis. For the Satyavatara, basically. So this is being referred to. Then again, the live streams, there are many, but if there's invitation to investigate those. The Panchavandanam, which is quite extensive, but at least the Satyavatara, the non-identification, the SV 101, and then within that, then it will give the mantra links. And the Panchavandanam has core Satyavedism teachings and practices. And so going through the Gitfo Panchavandanam would give an idea, seemingly, of main simple spiritual practices that can be utilized during any circumstances, under any circumstances, and during any crises, especially. But just being able to look through and refer to that without adopting or going into the formalities of or the logistics of how to do so, that would be under other circumstances that where there is, and there are to be demonstrations, and there already are a few. So refer to the teach port for introductory teachings. Also, again, since this is for those that Githo may not be familiar with this, Githo is God in the happening of. This is God Lang Essentials 101. God in the happening of, Githo, and Gitfo, God in the form of, and Getern, which is God eternity, and Ginfini, which is God infinity. So the avatar is speaking in God Lang, God Gitfo avatar. Again, any who are seemingly passing through, passing by, over here, seemingly. All right, now, now in God eternity, there have appeared to be in GIFO messaging on Facebook Messenger, GIFO, those that messages that imply bodies that are struggling, that the concerns are such concerns as I am alone, quote, I don't have companionship, or concerns that there's lockdown occurring. And actually there should be lockdown. There should be further lockdown, because the appearance of the waves of the GIFO disease is rising before waning. So there should be what is called lockdown, and there has been, referring to that there is something advantageous about quarantine. It may not appear to be so, but that can be the quarantining, GIFO happening of quarantining is perfect reason for spiritual practicing, to a perfect opportunity and reason to do spiritual practices during and when there is more seeming space for that to occur. So this has already been prescribed. Take advantage of what would be called lockdown and quarantining in order to do more spiritual practicing, in order to realize the true self, and also to assist God in the form of others and be able to have the minding clarity that is the seeming outcome of such spiritual practices if done with discipline. And there has also been addressing that you are not alone except as God. There may be some that have the hypnotism of feeling alone, that there are not others that are concerned or others nearby, or in order to be able to speak to or be intimate with, or whatever circumstances. But in fact, in truth, you are alone only as God. And as far as bodies are concerned, the whole rest of the omniverse is with the seeming apparent primary body. So the body is never, ever alone. In truth, even what is actually seen, the body is never actually alone. That is an emotional feeling, and it is because of the hypnotism of being a body, apparently, the not true self, of feeling that one is a body and that one is alone in the world under harsh circumstances. And that is a prime example of the hypnotism, and then the feelings that come with that. You are not actually alone as God, as the body, as the manifestation of God. There are bodies all around that body. And at any time, seemingly, at any point in God eternity, that body can reach out to other bodies. It's only the feeling of being alone that makes the body retract from engagement. So if those emotions and the mind content can be altered and can be purified, it would become apparent how the body couldn't possibly be alone. The whole rest of the omniverse is with that seeming apparent primary body. Now, this is not to diminish those feelings, though. It is simply to point to, and to speak truth and point to the real self, so that those feelings can start to be broken up, and the thought content can be exchanged for true content, for true God content, instead of the hypnotism. So it is not invalidating those thoughts or feelings. It is simply stating that that is not truth, and that there are other ways to get beyond the fiction hypnotism. And then the body and the mind content will change, and the body will start to feel lighter and less, and will not have feelings that would lead to what is called depression, etc. And if within the dreaming, if there can't be understanding that, even though this is speaking to God consciousness, if the mind is simply too frenetic, or it is just too dense to intuit that, to comprehend it, even the words being said, then there can be knowing, at least, that this Satyavatara is with this transmission, speaking that those that are, that the messages that have been received in God consciousness, the answer within that density then would be that, at least, quote, you are not alone, because Satyavatara is aware of what has been said. And if there is wanting to not be alone, and to be connected to this, to the seeming Satyavataric presence, then at least know that you are not alone in that respect. And that is quite God blessings. Just that alone is quite God blessing. So you are in fact not alone in that regard as well. So this satsanga is to reinforce that on all levels, on God absolute truth level, and God manifestation within God truth, in God absolute, not being alone in the entire manifestation, as is with. And also that there is engagement with the seeming Satyavatara presence. So you are not alone, period. So if there is wanting to engage further in actual participation in the satsanga, if there is wanting to ask questions, then this is speaking God truth. So it is not going to speak on what would be considered a mundane level. That would be catering to you as simply a body, just like regular seeming advice during crisis. It can seemingly be applied. The teachings can seemingly be applied and apparently look like something that might be considered practical in some way, meaning that a practice can occur that might in some way remedy, temporarily at least, certain activities that are occurring that it might be distressing. But it is always leading to the realization of the true self. Self-realization and God realization. So the main question always is, do you know what you are? Do you know what you are? Do you know? Usually the question is, do you know who you are? And even that is not usually like a normal question to ask. Usually when they're speaking, seeming bodies are speaking to one another, that's usually not a question. Do you know who you are? Usually don't ask such questions. It's usually more seemingly polite, socially normal questions, such as what do you do? And that usually is about the employment. What are you employed as? Are you a doctor? Are you a lawyer? Are you this? Are you that? What do you do? Well, as God, you exist. So if somebody wants to ask, quote unquote, in the dreaming, what do you do? You might say, the answer might be, I exist. And actually, it should be, I God manifest as God. That's truly what I do, not as a body. But who are you? And Satyavatara always says more specifically, what are you? Because who you are implies usually a person. And what you are is that God is not a person. So it's a what. So what are you? So when there's wanting to speak, if there's participation, then there doesn't have to be saying, what country are you in, or what do you do? Because those questions are not, there could be referring to the body's in such and such a seeming country in a dream. In a dream. That dream you're having, quote unquote. So if there's questions about being distressed because of the disease that is going on and the bodies that are being affected, all bodies should be cared for. All bodies, Git Fo, all bodies should be cared for. And in the previous teaching, it being reiterated that there has to be cooperation. There has to be very intense God manifesting. Very intense God manifesting that looks like cooperation instead of fighting and arguing and blaming and shaming and all of that useless activity that is not optimal for optimal God realization, for all the seeming work that has to occur, all the God manifesting that has to occur. And what are called God prayers. God prayers are manifesting too, because thought is God manifesting as well. It is part of, it is what it would be considered, what is the unseen aspects of God thought, because the seeming eyes cannot see God thought occurring, but it is occurring, and it is activity, and it's happening. God prayer is very important. It is God manifesting. But the best God manifesting in regard to God prayer is when the mind is clear, when it is not troubled. That is the best possible God manifesting thought content. Prayer, prakatana. That is what's called in Satyavedism, God prakatana. God prakatana is not what would be considered normal prayer, and it is not what is considered normal magic in fiction either. It is non-dual, whole, God manifesting. And it is not taught first. It is what would be considered an advanced level of God realization, not self-realization. Now, there can be prayer, and it can be effective, but when there is a lot of fiction in the mind content, it tends to be muddled, and it is not as effective in transmitting to where it has to transmit. And prayers are not contained in a body, in the mind, in what is considered the brain. It goes beyond that. It is transmitting what is unseen. So it is with caution that there was questioning about the magical order of Satyavedism, and that is current in God eternity always. It is in the hierarchy of the Gitfo, the absolute church of Satyavedism. So there is speaking, God transmitting about prayer. So what is called conventional prayer is effective, and it can be utilized in crisis mode. But the main simple modes are, again, the silence, mona, and japa mala, or japa of mantra, and meditation in the various forms of meditation, introductory, intermediate, and advanced, etc., the different stages. So there was not referring to prayer in the previous teaching because of the way prayer can be muddled by the minding that when it is seemingly limited in its thought content to being hypnotized into believing that a person is praying, that an individual is praying for another individual, and the mind is the thought content and the consciousness is dense. And again, speaking of that in reference to what would be considered magic, because prayer and magic are basically different words for the same activity in the dreaming, but it has to do with the awareness and the knowing directly that makes the vast difference between what is considered conventional prayer or conventional magic and God consciousness. Prakatana is not at all the same activity. So this is why there's caution when Satyavatara speaks about prayer and prakatana. And there actually are to be teachings specifically, extensively about this. But the fact that those teachings have not occurred is an example of the cautiousness with which this is proceeding about it, because it's when it is not done correctly, it can actually cause problems in the world, God, in the Gifo world. And there is going to be going into that. However, if there's wanting to pray, if there's wanting to God manifest prayer in the conventional sense, go ahead. If the intentions are pure, obviously, like this, as just spoken, that there are ways in which prayer can be done well. Conventional prayer can be done well. But there would be suggesting, though, that before conventional prayer, at least clear the mind with meditation and japa mala before praying. At least do that. So the prescription is, if there's going to seemingly be mundane prayer that can be effective in some way, clear the mind with meditation and japa mala, and then speak the prayers. Because then the consciousness which is purified to some extent more, and there be less density. So it might be more effectiveness. So at least that is being transmitted. But again, that as far as the advanced prakatana, God prakatana, which is not conventional prayer and is not conventional magic, it is not at all. There's a vast, vast difference. And those teachings are to come. So there was speaking then again, what are you? What are you during crisis? Now, one could ask that during any eventing, but especially during crisis, because crisis can break open what is considered normal activities, when everything seemingly in the dreaming can be on autopilot and activities are being done. But during crisis, it breaks up what is considered normal. There is no such thing as normal, but what is conventionally referred to as normal activities in in the cult of humanity, although it's not referred to as the cult of humanity normally. Normal activities in the dreaming. But when there are such crises that occur, there is somewhat of an awakening. It is not true awakening at all, but it is a different level in the dream. So there is an awakening out of some level of density into another level of maybe perhaps less density. So crisis is an opportunity to seemingly wake up out of the dream, at least temporarily. Again, there's no such thing as good or bad. So it's an opportunity to wake up out of normal activity. So the question is, do you know what you are? There are other questions too, obviously, but that is the main question. But that question cannot be answered by the mind. The classic question is, who am I? Again, you are not a who. It is what am I? It should be what am I? Do you know what you are? Do you know what you are during crisis? Do you really know what you are? If you knew what you were, you would not have a crisis. There would simply be action. The question is, how can what I am be known? Well, it can only be known directly. So it can't be known by mind content, cannot be known by mind content. But once it is actually realized, again, the mind can benefit from it. There's a perspective change. There's a perspective change and the body benefits from it. But you already are. That's why it cannot answer. The question cannot be answered. It only points to the mind dropping the content. This leads through to self-realization, not God realization, but self-realization. There are glimpses of the true self, of self. But what happens, even when it goes that far, even when there's a real sense somehow of it, at least temporarily, then it's like what happens is the human, then there's like the human activity resumes, and the mind content resumes, and the belief resumes. So it is not true realization, because even if there is a temporary stoppage of the mind, there's still belief. It is not purified. And all of the bodies around that body will continue to hypnotize it. So it is not, so even though intellectually the thought content is given, there's, the minding is just, it keeps on going. And this happens in teachings of self-realization, of non-dual teachings that are occurring now in God and infinity. Not to name specific God content, which is necessary for those that absorb it, and is wonderful that it actually exists. But that God thought content that is occurring, those teachings that are occurring, the non-dual teachings, tell those that are that are being absorbed in God consciousness, like what quote you are, and even guide through directly, so that there can be awareness of what you are, self-realization awareness, non-dual teachings. But then reinforce the body, that you are the body also, and speak about normal human conditions and use language referring to the body in normal conventional language, as if the realization were meaningless. It just goes back to normal species activity and speaks about normal species activity as if nothing happened. So that is not true self-realization. That is just glimpses of self-realization. It's not true realization, because there is not the minding, thought content really does not change. The activity does not change. All of that somehow or other is given the permission to just continue as usual. So ultimately, there would really be no difference then. Although one body might have a clearer minding occurring, so those teachings are great because they're closer to the truth, much closer to the truth. But then they stop short. It's not full self-realization. And it sure is not God realization. But that's, some want to stop at happiness, at species happiness. Like, that's enough. They can't really even comprehend what could be more, what more there can be. Because that's a relief just to be happy. So that's the sense of that there's direct non-dual teaching in order to get a for self-realization, but in order to get the body basically just is normal and is happy. But what's missing is the full potentiality of God manifesting. Because it is not just knowing the nothingness. It is not just knowing the nothingness directly. It is knowing the all directly, as the all, as God manifesting. There are some teachings that are not what's considered Satyavedism. There are some teachings that the self-realization is simply a way to get out of this world, like it is an escape. So there would be self-realization, and then that would be the goal. But that is not what is being expressed through Satyavedism, Satyavatara teachings. That is just the beginning. That is what every seeming body, when it first appears, should have, so that there was never be density and delusion in the first place. All of that comes from the hypnotism of species indoctrination. That is not, it is not natural. So that self-realization is, in that context, is entirely different. It is not for escaping the world, as if the world were there are other seeming teachings in other seeming whatever on different evolutionary levels that are no longer pertinent to the evolution, God evolution. That have not evolved. The world is not a place that needs to be escaped from in the dreaming. It's evolving. So self-realization should not be something that has to be done. It has become that because of the hypnotism of this species indoctrination in the first place. So all of the God manifesting that would be innately, all of that has to be uncovered, in other words, from all of the teachings to make one small. All of the teachings that have occurred, all the indoctrination, all the hypnotism that has made one think one is small. It's reversing everything, in other words. So yeah, for instance, one would, if who told you you were human? Who told you you were human? Who told you you belong to a species? Who told you all of that? That's it. It goes on and on and on. It's just that all of that information is just so normal. And then other information in fiction that has been passed down, there's other information then that refers back to that information, and then there's the question of how could have anyone believed that information? So whatever that information was, how could that have been believed back then, or whatever? And it just goes on to whatever the thought content that is spread and normalized and is propagated amongst seeming So anyway, who told you you were human? Who told you you were human? Who? What? What told you you were human? When a seeming baby form is seeming baby form doesn't know what it is. It has no idea. So there has to be the coming back to that sort of purity. The purity that always is. It's always pure. God consciousness is always completely pure. It's like, it is like there are different examples, but those examples are usually they're usually materialistic. Like the spiritual examples given in God in the form of in some of the Vedas, etc. They're in the Upanishads, etc. Those examples are use materiality in order to make examples of what cannot be made example of, the non-material. So it's a metaphor. Those are metaphors, but they're never going to be even close to speaking about it because they're materialistic metaphors. So is the sky and the clouds disappear. So the sky, the space of the sky is always there. Space is always there. But this is dimensionless space. It cannot be quantified. So it's space, but it's not space. It's not. That's the metaphor, space. Or again, the ocean, the moon on the ocean. The moon, when the ocean is waving, the moon, the one moon looks like many moons, all split into pieces and fractals and prismed. So it looks like many moons, but it's only a reflection of the one moon. So the consciousness is not it's what everything is in. It's always pure, but the only way to tell in a sense, is that the purity and the movement have to cease. The impurity and the movement cease, and then there's the stillness. The stillness that always is a reflection of that stopping all is a reflection of it that coexists at the same, inseparably. It's always already. It basically has to do with quieting and purifying. Quieting all the noise and purifying the thought content. It's a process. It's a seeming process. There are other seeming mundane metaphors, like cleaning the mirror, cleaning out the pond. It's all about getting rid of what's in the way. So with some of these non-dual teachings, it's like there's guiding to direct knowledge, but then there's all of the other content that seemingly continues, that cannot possibly be pure, and it is in the way. If there's true realization, one does not refer to oneself as a human anymore. You cannot say that there's been full realization and then continue to act and speak of yourself as a human and act like a human and resume regular activities. It doesn't work that way. What would you be afraid of? What would you be afraid of? What would you be self-conscious about? Everything is you. When there's full realization, they're speaking about it. They would speak about what you truly are. Why do you want to act like a little human being? Why do you want to try to even diminish yourself? There's like infinite God potential. There's infinite God manifestation after what's called self-realization. It doesn't stop there, and that's not even full self-realization, to stop there and then act like a human. All the God prakatana that can be done, but it cannot be done with impure thought content minding, or else it's not God prakatana. It's like has said before in the teachings, seemingly in infinity. There's caution to go into the teachings of God prakatana until there's realization. There can be preliminaries, even within what's called mundane magic or mundane prayer, which is it's magic. They're very similar. They're different words, but it's basically the same activities. Prayer and magic. In the dreaming, prayer and magic. That even within the prayer, the magic aspect of in the dreaming, in what would be considered, the individual is practicing magic. It's not, but it is not like that. But that is usually how it is seen. Individuals practicing magic. There are many steps before it gets to the actual process of practicing the magic. there's clearing of consciousness, there's clearing of thought content, there's discipline, and many of those are of those activities they're preliminary to get to the point where there's clarity enough even for what is called individual magical practices or whatever. There's a purification process. Otherwise, there are all sorts of manifesting that would be done that would be detrimental, or that is not what's actually wanted, what's actually needed. There is a seeming individual that wants something with ego, with egoing, with pseudo-egoing, and wants to use prayer and magic in order to get what one wants, even well-intentioningly, but it's still a form of narcissistic pseudo-egoing. And it's not, and in some cases, it's not even what the seeming individual in the dreaming really needs. It's what that wants. There's a difference between what one wants and what one needs. So when the pseudo-egoing is in the way, declaring what it wants, it may miss opportunities for what it needs, seemingly, in the dream. So there's much caution. There can even be a joke made about it, but this does not joke much about this. But there is one joke that it has said, which is that there should be a license for magic. There should be, because it's like, it would be like driving a car recklessly with, under the influence of alcohol, a body. It's similar to that in a sense. And that's even in the dreaming on an individualistic level that doesn't really exist. It's very important that even on that level, there has to be purification. So that's what they were saying about when they were speaking seemingly before, but there is no before in God eternity. That prayer was not mentioned first in the crisis teaching, the first crisis teaching, because there are many that may not understand what they need to pray for, quote unquote. What they're praying for may not be seemingly what they need in the dream. Nevertheless, there are many that want to pray anyway, apparently. So there should not be stopping them from praying, but this reserves there are many reasons why prayer is not. It is seen in the dream that prayer is simple and it's a basic activity, but there are other activities that, in a sense, need to happen prior to prayer. Prayer should not be an elementary activity. There should be clearing the mind content first. That's why it was prescribed that there should be japa, mala, and meditation even before what is considered mundane prayer, in order to clear. Because there's so much noise, especially in crises. There's so much noise and human and fiction, basically, that gets in the way of even attempting to do that properly in a dream level sense, let alone prakatana and God manifesting, which is again an entirely different activity. And there will be teachings about this, but has been reluctance to divulge these teachings because there has to be clarity. These are processes. It's about God beneficence, and that teachings not to be used in ways that would be detrimental or not in the way in which the teachings were meant to be used, etc. So anyway, during crisis, yes, pray. Use prayer. But what is being said is that practice mona of the words, mona of the mind, and then above that, finally, that's samadhi. But start with mona of the words. Start with mona of the words. Get away from the seeming noise. Stop making noise. Stop making fiction noise. Stop contributing to that fiction. And then start to wean off of that fiction as well. And then the mantra, Japamala mantra, again, clarification, clearing the thought content, especially of intrusive thoughts and distressing thoughts during crisis, etc. And then meditation again. This is being repeated over and over again, because these are essential processes. So the meditation is with the eyes closed, with the body still, with the eyes closed, with the body moving. Then another stage is with the eyes open, with the body moving in whatever seeming circumstances are happening. That's a pretty advanced stage, though. It's like most have to start with the bodies have to be in one position, and the eyes closed, because they said the eyes are the primary ocular illusory contribution to fiction, that has been mentioned. In the previous teaching, there was an extensively teaching about not believing in what is seen with the eyes. Again, that has to do with Prakatana as well. The study of Prakatana basically is transcending the eyes, the sense organs, being able to the God vision. God vision is not with the sense organ like that. So with the meditation, with the eyes open, with the body moving, etc., and then ultimately it goes beyond meditation, and then it's not considered meditation anymore. And then there was mentioning of the body, what the body needs, what apparent primary bodies need in the previous teachings, all the essentials of what the actual body care, what the body needs are. So please refer to that teaching and practice those prescriptions. The body also needs exercise. That was not mentioned in the previous teaching, but the body needs exercise. That is part of the building of immunity, of the immune system, rather, for defense against disease. When there's exercise of the body's chemistry is completely different from what would be considered sedentary, apparent primary body functioning. So it is again, it's another very important aspect of health for the body. So the question again was, who are you, or what are you? And then feel free that in participation in here, there's listening, that is participation in God consciousness. But again, that there's the ability to participate by being invited to the live stream in a more participatory way. And by the way, in a meta sense, meta information, there's the ability to live stream the GIFO Satsangha's transmitting through what is called Gitfo, Facebook Messenger, directly, and there can be multi-participation, seemingly, of the digital representations of the APBs on the screen seen simultaneously and speaking. And by the way, there does not have to be visual representation of a primary body if there is some feelings of shyness or not wanting for some reason or another to be seen in digital representation like this that is being recorded and maybe used for other purposes, for transmission teaching. So there can still be participating with what is called audio, with the video out, and the voice auditory can still be heard in God consciousness. So there's saying that it's not mandatory that if there's participation on the screen, that there needs to be an image of an apparent primary body digital representation. That's not mandatory. Nothing's mandatory, but just speaking that in case that would lessen any seeming anything that would be stopping it from wanting to participate in that way. So there could be what's called commenting, texting. There can be audio participation, and there can be video participation. But in the Facebook Messenger, there can actually be multi boxes at the same seeming simultaneously. So there can be an experiment with that, and that could be maybe vertically designed or what is called horizontally presented, possibly, but it allows for much more participation via that way. So there might be a little bit of experimenting with the Satsangahas, got in the happening of, to figure out what might be optimal, or maybe using both capabilities, and just to see which one might be preferable and all. Same goes for the live stream teachings, GitHo. There's going to be some experimenting with that, and and maybe asking for some questions for participation, for seeing what might be preferenced. So anyway, that's some meta speaking about the Satsanghas and the live streams. But the goal is that on both, more so on the Satsanghas, but to some extent on the live streams, that there be back and forth participation or multi-participation apparently. So there can be questions and concerns and statements, etc., transmitted, God speaking to God about God, and that would open up the Satsanghas to as much participation as possible. So, but that is to be seen how that, and it should occur naturally. There should not be feelings of needing or to do so. And then the participation will be on multi-platforms for the live streaming. And for the Satsanghas, at least for now, it's on Facebook or Facebook messengering, GitHo, God Intel Tech. So questioning might be, past what are you or who are you, and that is the main question. So Satyavatara is not concerned with all the fictional aspects of what you think you are. It is concerned for the care of bodies, though, the care of bodies and the health of bodies. But the primary concern is what you are, and the realization of what you are. So the question is, what practices, what is being done, what God manifesting is being done toward discovering what you truly are, past what you hear you are by hearing the transmission. So are any spiritual practices being done, especially during crisis, quote unquote, seemingly in the dream, which would be especially when there would be need for such activities, not lessening those activities, but actually more need for those activities. How is the mind being quieted? How is the body getting some relief? How much sleep is the body being given during seeming crisis mode? How much, what is the minding being fed? The content, the thought content seemingly incoming, apparently incoming. Is there watching of what is called the news? Or is there ingesting content on GIFO internet, watching GIFO TV, or movies, or like what is being absorbed? Because there's endless information about what is going on, and it's necessary to have access and to absorb certain information that would be helpful for the body's health, the apparent primary body's health, APB. That is necessary, and there should be what is called research, God Intel Tech research, in order to have access to information that is conducive to the body's health. But past that, what information is being absorbed where it starts to become noise, and it starts to be absorbed to the point where it's disturbing, and it is hypnotizing into believing that the body's health, the body's going to get ill, the other bodies are sick, what if this body dies, all of that. And then belief that you are a body, and that could happen, and that would be the end, etc. It's like past a certain point, that helpful information is just more species hypnotism in order to hypnotize into believing that you are a human body. During crisis, there's a lot of fear. When there's true realization, there is no fear at all, no matter what's going on. That does not mean there's not caring. It just means that there's no fear. Optimal God manifesting with nothing in the way. No dream emotions. So there has to be carefulness about not feeding the minding more thought, more content than is necessary that can turn into emotional fear or despair. There has to be knowing when there's important happenings and eventings, but there should not be hypnotization further into like what that means. And so there should be carefulness about what information is being absorbed in God consciousness. In other words, there has to be some way to have some discerning about that. So go toward the information that would be conducive to the body's health. And that has already been expressed in the previous teaching more specifically. Oh. So where are the seeming? Where is the presence where the messages that have been sent, the messages that are received in God consciousness about wanting help because of feelings of being alone or being overwhelmed by the quarantine and etc. Is there any seeing? Are there any questions that could be addressed specifically? Those. There is a way to broadcast this to those that where the asking has occurred. Well, there, so there are those communications. This has just been sent to some of those communications. There's another request, which is for a seeming assistance. So this has been transmitted and will continue to be transmitted. If there is wanting seemingly directly for the Gifo Satyavatara as Satguru, what is called Satguru, seemingly in the dreaming, because real Satguru is God. Real Satguru is not the body. But what seems to be in the dreaming, the projectioning, is that it is considered through a seeming body or representation, appearance. So if there is really wanting assistance specifically from the seeming representation, then there should be, it's already being transmitted that there is what is called Satyavedism seva, which is volunteering. And the volunteering is what would be considered as a formality, quote unquote, that would make it so that there seemingly in the dreaming would be more proximity to the apparent primary body of Satyavatara for guidance. Now the God in the happening of the teachings of Satyavedism are already propagating and proliferating and just out in God Inteltech for all, because the teachings are for God in the form of the world, worldwide, for all. But for those that, for some reason or another, feel that there needs to be, in a sense, more intimacy or proximity, or somehow or other that is felt, then that is a God manifesting. That means that God is manifesting that it is not. In other words, it is not to be said that, oh well, the teachings are for the world, so that's not necessary. That is God manifesting that. So it is meant to be. So for those that seemingly feel that, then there should be applying for that formality of the application. There does not need to be application, but it's a formality. That's all. It's just a formality. It is for God in the form of those seemingly that have shown interest, for one's interest, to make sure through the reading of the content that takes place in the application process, to make sure that they're simple, that it takes them through the steps and the information, to make sure that once the information is read, that's actually what is still wanted. That's all. It's just a way to make sure that those that are drawn that way have not misunderstood or projected upon the context, and then would read carefully and say, oh, well, there was some misunderstanding, and then not proceed. So that's all it exists for. The application is simply to make sure that there is no misunderstanding, and yes, indeed, that is what is wanted. And then there should be submitting it. So then that would be, it is not just for the seva or volunteering God service. It is the primary purpose then for those that are wanting that obviously is direct attention, seemingly in the dreaming direct attention. That is the main purpose. That is the main purpose. So that would make the body seemingly what is called Satguru, of the seeming one that is coming forth in this way, God manifesting that. So that would be the primary Satguru. There would be no need for any other seeming guru at that point, because there would be no purpose. That meaning you've reached the ultimate here, so there is no reason to have seeming others and be involved with. And that is not because this wants or needs anything. This needs nothing. It is simply to focus those that are God manifesting toward this, so that the minding will be focused on how this should be done, without the noise of other types of spiritualities and spiritual practices and alternatives and all of that. So the fact that you get to this point means that this is meant to be, and this is the highest teaching. This is the highest teaching, if there's any sort of hierarchy in God in the form of this world. And Satyavedism has not spread to be known worldwide yet in that way. That is to occur, but at this stage in evolution, it has not spread in that way yet. So again, this is quite God blessings. It's quite God blessings. So if there's wanting help in that way, and if there's being drawn in this way, then there has to be understanding. There's sort of like a disconnect that's occurring. There's kind of asking for help, but not making the leap into directness. So this is stating now that if there's asking for help in that way, and it's not just asking once, it's asking multiple times, seemingly multiple occurrences through communicationing. If it's persistent asking, then there should be asking, why is this occurring? Why is there asking over and over again? So this is directing now. This is giving the answer now. They should recognize that pattern and know that is the instructions are: drop the resistance to get from one step to the next step. Drop the resistance. If this is wanting help and wanting this as Satguru, then follow the instructions in order for that to occur. It's a test, seemingly. It can be perceived as a test. So just go from point A, seemingly, to point B. Follow the process, because it is well worth it. It is well worth it. It may not appear that there's enough interactioning. Perhaps part of, maybe that's a little of the resistance, is that when there are calls, and this satsanga has gone past the initial content that is meant to address, but so, and this is fine. When there are calls for help like that, when there are actually video calls, again, this does not transact that way in seemingly individual teachings, because the teachings are for the world. So it has to be presented to the world, God in the form of the world, what is called publicly, seemingly in fiction, what is called publicly, because it has to be all done all at once, en masse. So, but when there are calls like that, that is not that this is ignoring the calls. It is not ignoring the calls. They should not be taken personally. If there's persistent calling to get help, follow the process. Just follow the process. It's not, there is no trying to avoid. It's not, this is not avoiding. And this, again, this seeming apparent body is very busy. It does nothing at all except everything is for God and the happening of Satyavedism. There are no seeming extracurricular activities. There are no side projects. There's no other work. There's no other anything. It is all, this is the mission. Even when there seems to be nothing occurring, Satyavedism is being propagated. And what is seen is not all there is. There is much work. There are many teachings. So when the calls are not responded to, it is not that anything is being ignored. It is simply that this apparent body seemingly is, there isn't even 100%. It's like whatever percent is not, it's off the charts. There's no percent that is not totally devoted to Satyavedism in the world, God in the form of the world that is myself. Nothing else. Everything is for this. So when there is the question that should be asked is, if there is persistent interest, then that is a sign. That is a sign from God that there should be participation in the form of service, God's service. So the God and the happening of Satyavedism seva, volunteering, and then to have the seeming avatar as a direct Satguru, because there is not one without the other, because this is in service to God in the form of the whole world. This is serious. So when know that interest, that's God calling seemingly you to service, to wake up and to serve the world, God in the form of the world. There is so much God manifesting that needs to be done. There are countless lists of God manifesting activities. There are scriptures that need to be released. There is so much work that has to get done that cannot possibly be done by one body in the world. So God is calling those that are interested to not just send messages or to get frustrated when those messages are not answered in the way that those responses were wanting. This is directly giving the reason why there's interest. So know if there's wanting for Gifo Satyavatara seemingly in the world to be the Satguru, and then join God in the form of the Discord server 1. Fill out the Satyavedism seva application and agreeing to that activities and the Satguru, the one Satguru, which is God, Sadguru is God, all. And then there'll be access to what is called the GIFO SATYAVEDISM Discord Server 2, which is for the service and the org, etc. And there'll be admitting into that. So there is so much God manifesting that needs to be done. There's endless, there's lists, there's all of this has been organized, seemingly. It's all organized. There's nothing that has been dropped, apparently, in fiction. There's no activities that have been left behind or forgotten or just on to the next activity. Satyavedism is not like that. It is seemingly an accumulation that grows and grows and grows. But the seeming lists get longer as to what needs to be God manifested. And nothing is left out and nothing is dropped. But there needs to be more God manifested. There needs to be seemingly apparent bodies, so that even after this body seemingly is no longer appearing in God in the form of the world, that the work, the God manifesting that needs to be done will continue. God in the form of myself in other bodies, other God manifesting in the world. So if there's interest, that means something. So this is a calling. This is God calling. Even within crisis. And that would be considered karma yoga, possibly. Well, there are many yogas within that, within the Satyavedism, but that would be one aspect of the various spiritual practices. Seva would be considered the karma yoga of Satyavedism, where there would be the direct teachings through Satyavatara, and the practice of the God work, the God manifesting, the karma yoga, translated into another phrase. That is helpful in God realization as well. And there are other again, there's God manifesting of other aspects where the way in is through seva, and then there are other levels that can be gone through. For instance, there's a Gifo Gurukulam that is to start when there is the first to come. And there's also, again, the magical order of Satyavedism. And those are, and of course the Swami, the sannyasa, when that happens, etc. So there are different levels. But the main level that there's of coming in is seva. Again, for those that seemingly, when there's not interest in going into it that intensely or that way, then of course there are all the teachings that are propagating in God in the form of the world, that will continue to propagate, and that can lead to direct realization as well that way. But the ones that are seemingly more direct in a seeming tangible way in the dreaming, this has delineated what those ways, the main way, and then the other ways that can happen. But again, for those that have the messages that have been received, this is the way. This is the way. Gifo, seemingly the presence is needed. God in the form of the Discord Satyavedism Discord server, and in the for the applying for seva for and as for feeling of being alone, again, you were never alone except as God. You're never alone. The body's never alone in God Omniverse, and you're never alone because there is proximity apparently through God Inteltech with Gifo Satyavatara presence. So start to feel some relief, because this is more than seemingly just words in fiction. This is not this transmission has nothing to do with what is considered the normal content in the fictional species fiction, cult of humanity dream. May that at least give some piece of minding, if nothing else. By the way, too, God in the form of those whose presence as God consciousness, those that have already seemingly submitted the Gifo applications, and there has been acceptance into Seva, and also as Satyavatara as Sadguru. This is officially beginning very shortly. As a matter of fact, it's going to be this week in eternity, God eternity. So there's requesting that there's going to be communicating through the Gifo Discord servers 1 and 2, and that there's what is called direct messaging, or what is called DMing, or private messaging. Again, there's no privacy in God, but it's respected in the dream. Privacy is respected anyway, but there's no such thing as privacy, because God knows everything. God is omniscient. That there's going to be response through those ways. That's the central hub of communicating, God transmitting and receiving for conducting these activities. So please put on what are called the notifications in God Inteltech, notifications for Gifo Discord, so that there can be response. So show some sort of response back to the communicating, even if it's through what is called emoji or something, like, yeah, got it, or something. And then there can be going forth. So this week in eternity, this is now, there's no time. There's no time really, but it's made up. And in the fiction, there has to be pointing to times in order for certain God manifesting to occur, whatever those labelings are. So this is considered Monday in God eternity, Eastern Daylight Time. It has already become Tuesday early in eternity. And so this week, what is called a week in eternity, the seva is about to commence, and there's going to be video conferencing that's going to occur, and the questioning is whether it should be through all bodies, apparent primary bodies, digital representations being present all at once, if that's possible, or whether there would have to be separate conferencings. The goal here, and this is Satsanga is being used to speak about this now, after all the other content, because this is spontaneous. So this is occurring. God is spontaneous. So the goal of that is to have all the bodies congregating in the God Intotech, so that there can be back and forth. So this was previously attempted, but it did not occur because so it has, but now it has to God manifest, and in order for that to be done, there has to be what would be considered congregating. And because of this seeming crisis that has been occurring for a while now in eternity, this has seemingly what is called normalized. It's the evolution of God Intotech communication that has occurred. It exponentially occurred during the seeming crisis, because the bodies could not continue the normal activities of all being together and close in proximity, seemingly being seen together and close and all, that there had to be what's called social distancing in God Infinity. So the use of video conferencing, transmitting and receiving, became exponentially more occurring, and it became popular, and so now it's what is called normalized. It's become normal, and so eventually, when there is not, eventually saying in eternity, when there's not the need for the social distancing measures that are continuing and need to be done, when that tapers off eventually, what is going, all of the evolution that has occurred because of the crisis, a lot of it will be retained now as being normal. So that's why it can never be said that, well, there are many other ways in which this is true, but it can never be said that there is good and bad, because evolution occurs within what is considered bad or not desired. There can be a lot of God evolution that occurs because of that. So this is a perfect case of that. So now there's mass video, God Intotech mass video conferencing, and that is going to be continued. So there needs to be, in the God manifesting of God service, then a lot of communication, and where the bodies seemingly are participating seemingly together. So be aware that is going to occur. If there's any reservations as to shyness, what is called shyness, then that's a spiritual practice that's going to have to be, that is one of several, of many spiritual practices, and this can guide those seemingly that where there's shyness or perhaps special needs can be addressed, to make this as conducive and loving as possible and understanding seemingly as possible. So they'll be taking into account what the seeming needs are for the particular presences of the one presence, and figure out how the best ways and methods for this seeming um, um, for all the activity to occur. So this is quite wonderful. That so again, this is a call. This is cooperating for those, God in the form of those that are already have made the seeming leap into this stage of the evolution, of the spiritual evolution, seemingly what looks like that. And to those that have shown interest but maybe have not understood what the intuition has God manifested, because there is sometimes a disconnect between the thoughts and the intentions and the actual actions. And this God vision is that sometimes there's not knowing how to make that leap from one to the other, out into the actual what is needed. So if there's any frustration, this is calling and saying that's the reason. Sometimes there's not knowing why the behavioring is occurring. There's not insight into what the actual, like, why. So this is why. This is why. And as for those that, if this is seen, those that have voiced seeming attraction to the body for other reasons that do not directly have to do with the teachings or this being Satguru or whatever, that's just a somewhat mangled way of realizing that God is still calling, and that, again, the mind is perceiving in one way, but what's actually happening is something else. So wake up to that, if that's possible, that it is not because of the appearance, it's not because of this appearance or attraction to this appearance. It's that God is calling seemingly from, and there's a misunderstanding of that calling. So see what that misunderstanding is and try to transcend that. And that is a call for the awakening in fiction to occur. And then so for seemingly those messages, then this is suggesting the same as what has been said, which is that that is a way of, that there's a misunderstanding, and that this is an attraction for this as Satguru, and that there should be receiving the message for God's service, for the seva. So applying for the seva and joining the Gifo Discord server. So this is not ignoring those that are when there's behavioring that way either. It has not ever rejected those that are showing behavior in that respect, misplaced attraction. It is never rejected, and no, it is never angry. It is never there is no ever any feeling of anger that comes through this body ever. So any suggestions that this body was angry or from any words that were expressed is pure superimposition from the mind perceiving the words. So this has never rejected any of is said that something has been misplaced or misperceived. So this is an invitation for this to be seemingly Satguru, but the intent should be changed. The intent should be changed. This is God speaking through this representation. And so it's a call to answer the call of God. So if there's still interest after this has been said, then join the GIFO Discord, have the presence in the Discord server community where it seems to, where the transactioning occurs, and have the application filled out and submitted. Read the information carefully, and if there's agreement, then submit that. This never rejects anything, because all is myself as God. So it never rejects anything, and it never just pure God. Well, the Satsangahas to come, there should be somehow the calling that has been taking place there should be calling when this is occurring, when the Satsanghas are occurring. And if a call happens, then this should be redirected to the way where the inviting can occur during the live streaming, during the GIFO Satyavatara Satsangha. And then and it's much easier. This can happen much more easily now that the functionality has been the functionality that was discontinued has been revived and is now functional. So you can invite directly into this satsanga. So this is to occur. This is all natural. It's all natural. So God, thanks for the participation through what is called text and there is one question, maybe this can be clarified. In the live, in the live streamings, the new format of the live streamings seems to be presenting during the God transmissionings, when the avatar is showing on the screen. There are some different displays that show alongside of the avatar. Like there's a big box that says the live streams, and then there's what is called the chat box, and then there's the information for what is called social media, God Intel Tech and there's like a Gifo ticker like above and all that. So question would be, should those ingredients in the main display be left on, or should some of those be toggled off? Does it seem to be too busy for concentration, or does it not affect the absorption? So that is just a question that either can be answered in the comments now in eternity, or perhaps in the Seva meetings to come, when there's congregating, apparently. Oh, for the Gifo chat, yeah, yes, well, yes, that's possible. That well, this should be saying what was said. The God quote, the God text quote is, it opens up for inappropriate things on screen, ? So that would show on the screen the questions or the comments and all, and if there was anything could be said, so it's possible that something quote inappropriate might be said. There is the possibility of, if it were very distracting, or, well, it would not matter if it were negative or a criticism seemingly, but if it were distracting, or too distracting, or too many, or whatever could happen, then there are ways to what would be called moderate that, or so that would, it could be addressed. So yes, that was a seeming concern that might happen, but there are ways to, while that is occurring, to actually address that. And there are also Gifo, what are called bots, chat bots, that can also serve for moderation in certain situations as well. It's all customizable for so that can. But as far as what it actually looks like, because it, in one way, it sort of looks somewhat artistic, and also at any seeming stage, when there's entry into the live streaming, then they'll immediately be able to see what is happening. And also, God alone exists, God alone is reality, is a constant reminder of that. It's a teaching. The box is a teaching itself, like as the constant reminder, the words. But there was just also sort of leaving it open for God in the form of those that might think or figure that it might be too much information, all like while there's trying to absorb the speaking, the God transmission. But if there's true concentration on the teaching in God consciousness, then the visuals should not interfere. There would just be concentrating on the God transmission, the in God consciousness, the God truth speaking. So again, that should be a test to see if there can be so much concentration that all the other elements would not be problematic or whatever. So, but this is simply expressing this so that there can be just more, so there can be knowing that the components can be switched on and off, and also as this proceeds, that as suggestions, that's part the God Seva, the SVMPO, the Seva and all is that as all of as this starts in God Eternity this week, and all that all of the activities that are going to occur, and all of the endless God manifesting, all of the seeming lists of God manifesting lists. There's also complete openness to all sorts of suggestions that can be incorporated into all of this, and so that there's feeling that there's that all of it's not just what is seemingly already been determined, that there's so much more that can be God manifested by suggestionings and what is called feedback and all of that. So this questioning was just sort of a preview of that, of what is God thought about that, and there'll be polling, taking polls for certain activities and to proceed, and etc. and all. So this is sort of what is called a preview, a vision. And there's that should be helpful and encouraging. So there has to be determining how the first meetings should proceed, and sort of coordinating, like figuring out schedules in eternity, and the best ways in which the various seeming schedules can overlap to find optimal meeting times in eternity. So this should be exciting, and this is God auspiciousness. So all right. So the Satsangahas that are to proceed, to continue and all, should have more participation that would take place through audio and video, and the live streaming. This should have either participation of possibly audio on the after the main teaching of a live stream, or a separate live streams that are devoted specifically to question and answerings of God truth. There are several ways that all of this can be done, but it is to branch out into more and more participation, and so this is how it is proceeding, and again, nothing is ever forgotten. Everything is happening simultaneously. There's complete, absolute devotion, zillion%. So, what are you? God alone exists. God alone is reality. God alone exists. God alone is reality. God alone exists. God alone is reality. God omniscience. God omnipresence. God omnipotence. Om. Om. Om, God peace. Om, God blessings. Om, God love. Om, God absolute love. Om. Om, the next God in the happening of live streams of Satyavedism and the God in the happening of Satyavatara Satsanghas are to continue and become more and more frequent. There's going to be more frequency. There may or may not be what is called in God eternity regular scheduling. That is to be determined. It is going to continue spontaneously and then the teachings become more frequent. And the seva, the conferencing that occurs with the seva, what would be called the Gifo meetings, and then the teachings, the seva teachings, are to occur. So it's going to get very seemingly busy, seemingly, apparently, as it has been seemingly busy, more or less, dependingly, not apparently, or whatever. It's going to transition to more and more seemingly apparent. But rest assured that there has never been any discontinuation of anything. There's always seemingly busy, God manifesting, God in the happening of Satyavedism. Om. 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 God peace, God love, God blessings. Om. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om.